Polling the Humber vote, we ask 100 Humber students how engaged they are in politics.
And our Twitter and Facebook making a difference with young voters, a generational look at the 41st federal election.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Humber News. Today is Wednesday, April 27th. I'm Steph Springer.
And I'm Arda Zakarian. On today's show, we'll be taking a look at Canada's youth and the upcoming federal election.
The numbers are in from this weekend's advanced polling, and over 2 million Canadians turned out to cast an early ballot. This is up 34% from 2008 and could be a promising sign that voter participation is on the rise, even though overall it has been steadily decreasing since 1988. In 1988, the number of eligible voters was 18 million, with 13 million voting. That's over 75%. In 1997, out of a total of about 20 million eligible voters, only 13 million cast ballots at 67%. And in the last federal election in 2008, one of the lowest turnouts was recorded. There were about 24 million eligible voters. Only 14 million showed up to vote, just under 60%.
The worst voter turnout, bar none, is among young people. While the upcoming federal election is all over the news, it's not clear many students are taking notice. Humber News reporter Sangeeta Patel investigates why students seem to be so disconnected from politics.
At the end of a busy semester, most students are scrambling to catch up on classes, prepping for exams, and finishing off final projects. It's no surprise that they have no time to think about the upcoming federal election. But even when elections are held at other times of the year, youth voter turnout has been extremely low. In the 2008 federal election, only 58.8% of eligible Canadian voters cast a ballot. Youth turnout was the lowest, with 34.1% of those aged 18 to 24 casting a vote. The highest voter turnout was in the 75-plus age category, where 71.7% of eligible voters cast a ballot. Humber politics professor Chris Irwin says there are many contributing factors.
Some generations in the last 40 to 60 years seem to have been more directly engaged by politics than others, and that can be attributed to a number of factors. Depends on where you live in the world, what your social economic circumstances are.
Humber TV News conducted an informal poll of 100 Humber students at both the North and Lakeshore campuses to see what students here think about politics. 48% of Humber students said they were interested in politics, and 61% said they cared about who would win the next federal election. 61% of students also said they were going to cast a ballot, but only 39% knew when the election was happening.
Voter turnout helps determine the validity of every democracy, and that's why we constantly hear every vote counts. But as overall numbers continue to decrease in Canada, experts are left trying to figure out the disconnect between politics and youth.
With about 1.5 million students in post-secondary schools across the country, Jim Robeson, Director of Advocacy with the College Student Alliance, thinks more could be done to engage the youth vote.
But ultimately, I think there needs to be a connection made amongst the student body as a whole across Canada with whether it's a political leader or just the candidates from that riding.
Heather Bastedo, a researcher with Samara Canada, an organization that studies citizen engagement, agrees that underrepresentation is a key issue.
The critical thing that I found in my research is representing their values. They're just substantially not representing youth values. So they're out of touch with the kinds of things that youth care about.
Although voter turnout has been on the decline since 1988, with social media and student vote mobs doing such a large part to engage youth, there may be some hope of seeing a spike in this 41st federal election. Sangeeta Patel, Humber News.
Thanks, Sangeeta. The end of that report featured the new phenomenon of a vote mob, the political version of a flash mob. These young groups of people who are passionate about democracy and voting are popping up at universities across the country. They first started as a response to a rant by CBC TV's Rick Mercer encouraging young people to get out and vote. The student-led initiatives have used everything from rallies to parades to parties to encourage young people to cast a vote. According to leadnow.ca, a website founded by young people to promote political action, at least 25 vote mobs have taken place during this election campaign, and there are still more planned for the days ahead.
What other strategies can political parties use to win the youth vote? May 2nd will be Canada's first federal election where social media could make a difference. Sites like Facebook and Twitter have gained momentum in the last few years when it comes to sending out a message to the public, and the candidates are taking full advantage. Humber News reporter Meg Banks has the story.
Young people are plugged in. So politicians trying to get their message out to that hard-to-win youth demographic have found themselves dropped unceremoniously into that terrifying online realm, the Twitterverse.
It's a great way of breaking down barriers, so the young people can get involved with the politicians and actually talk to them one-on-one, which is really interesting.
But do Canada's politicians really have what it takes to play on that stage?
That's been a hashtag fail.
Fleet says the challenge for politicians who use social media is not just getting the lingo or amassing the followers, but actually motivating young people to do something.
You have a whole number of people following you, you can do some great things online, but unless you can convert that into people leaving their house and going to vote, then it doesn't really matter, and it's that call to action that's really important.
Peter Leo is a veteran in CBC's election war room when it comes to covering campaigns for radio.
I think that outreach has become, again, we've thrown the playbook out.
He says the 2008 election showed only around 30% youth voter turnout, and he thinks Twitter could be one of many solutions.
Young voters, well, young people who we hope will become young voters, because that's not a given. I think that they are people who we need to engage more.
At the very least, Twitter puts another set of eyes and ears on the ground for politicians and media people. Liberal candidate Justin Trudeau tweeted us about it. He said, "Tweets help me be accessible and engaged with those who are interested. But if a youth just doesn't care, Twitter won't change much." So it seems like until a party can really capture the minds of this generation, what you can sum up into 140 characters isn't really going to matter.
But Fleet says there is a right way to use social media, but Canadian politicians just haven't quite found it yet.
A lot of people said that social media won the election for Obama. Social media didn't win the election. What social media let them do was connect a huge network of volunteers, and they were then able to go out and engage with other people.
Whether or not the 2011 election really is the so-called Twitter election remains to be seen. But hopefully, it's the beginning of a more engaged and accessible electorate. Meg Banks, Humber News.
A recent poll conducted by Ipsos Reid found that 21% of Canadians, about 1.4 million potential voters, use social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter. Of those who log on, 6% use platforms to discuss public policy and political issues. But the most interesting number, of the 21% of Canadians who use social media, 29% of those are aged 18 to 34.
When we come back, we'll hear what the party leaders have to say about post-secondary education, and we'll find who speaks for students at the federal level. The College Student Alliance advocates for change on issues affecting students.
Across Ontario, the specific concerns around student affordability. The debt load that students are taking on each year is growing. It's not decreasing.